Hi, I'm Jim Holman. I'm the owner and editor of the Reader newspaper. And I'm sitting here with Roger Shuley, who was a reporter for the Union Tribune for how many years?
44 years.
44 years. And I got to know Roger many years ago, but it was outside of his duties as a reporter for the paper, but he was covered a lot of areas and eventually concentrated on history. And Roger was nice enough to join me here to talk about two cover stories, narrated and / written by, I would maintain, San Diego's most consequential public figure, C Arnholt Smith. It's quite a long story, and I would say it's probably one of the best and most important stories we've ever run in the Reader in our 50 years of existence. And Smith himself, I would say, made it one of our most important stories, or our most important story, because he was, I would argue, the most consequential public figure in San Diego, or historical figure in San Diego during the 20th century. Now, I don't know if you'd agree with me about that.
I wouldn't agree with you on that, but he was one of the half a dozen movers and shakers who really shook things up.
Okay.
He made San Diego.
Made San Diego. And he is, Smith, I would say, is a controversial figure because he had a great rise and a big influence on the town, and was called, was it by the Union Tribune? I think it was the Union Tribune who called him Mr. San Diego of the Century. So they had these awards where once a year someone would get the title Mr. San Diego. Isn't that right? And he was called Mr. San Diego of the Century by the Union Tribune.
No, not by the Union Tribune, by the Grant Club.
Oh, by the Grant Club.
The club from the Grant Hotel, Grant Grill. They get together and say, who was the best, who was the big number one, so like the Time Magazine Man of the Year. Oh. So they would always pick somebody, and he was in 1961 or something like that, first half of the 60s.
Yes.
And nowadays the San Diego Rotary Club declares the man, Mr. and Mrs. San Diego every year, but he was one of those.
And so now, who else would be up there with him? Would you say? Because I don't have the historical perspective you do. I'm trying to think. Who would it be? Roger Hedgecott? No, I don't think so. James Copley, maybe. I don't know. Who else would you say? Spreckles?
You mean of the
20th century?
Well, we had
20th century.
You have to think of the two halves of the century, I guess.
Okay.
So the first half of the century would have people like John Spreckles, E.W. Scripps,
yes,
George Marston,
yes,
the builders, the contractors, the bankers were the movers and shakers until around 1950, through World War II. Okay. Then the second half of the century was dominated by people like C Arnholt Smith, who came in after those founding fathers, you might say.
Okay.
And they took over the city, and there was always a rivalry between the old guard and the new guard, the Young Turks and the establishment, the downtown crowd, and everybody else. So
was Smith, he was part of the new crowd, are you saying?
I would say he was part of the post-World War II crowd.
Okay. Because I think it's kind of funny, too, that in the early 1970s, Harold Keene, who was a political reporter for San Diego Magazine, wrote about the emergence of these new bankers, Dick Silverman and Bob Peterson, and he called them the Young Turks.
Right, that's exactly the case.